I worship the god of progress.
I can still remember actually like what the guy was wearing. That hand was just like, it's just seared into my memory. If you're not bluff catching a lot versus fish, you are certainly leaving money on the table.
Today, I'm going to be interviewing Jon Chai, who's my business partner, one of my most successful students of all time, my associate coach, one of my very best friends, and an absolute poker crusher. So if you're wondering what it's like to go from 100 no limit to 1,000 no limit in less than 6 months time, to have your first 50K month 6 months after you begin playing online poker, today's episode is for you. So sit back and enjoy. Jon Chai, welcome to the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. How you doing, sir?
Happy to be here. I think this is it's probably a long overdue interview episode, given how many villager interviews or villager episodes you've had, or how many people in the Slack community you've had. So I'm excited. I'm excited for my my chance to be on the podcast and get to talk about myself.
Yeah, you decided to hold out, until you were going to be a proper guest, right? Like building up your credentials and your credibility,
exactly.
and your poker coaching in the industry, and apparently your confidence a little bit too, before you came on, and really happy to have you here. And yeah, so without any further ado, let's just dive into, the first question. That's always my favorite one. And that's the story of how you got involved with playing cards.
My story is going to be very generic. I think it's probably the most common answer I hear on your podcast. I started playing with friends early on in middle school.
How old are you? When is middle school?
Oh, okay. So I'm 32 years old right now. I just turned 32. So I was in middle school in 2005, 2006, just playing $10 home game. I didn't know the difference between a cash game and a tournament, when I first started playing. So we were playing sit and goes, but we didn't know that we were playing sit and goes. I remember asking why are they called blinds, right? And why are they even there? I didn't understand at least the point of pre-flop action at the beginning was to win the blinds. Didn't know that they were there to drive action. We were just, we'd seen poker on TV. I was sort of too young for the moneymaker boom too. So I remember watching poker on ESPN, but I didn't really know who anyone was. I didn't really follow the scene closely at all, but it was just it was a fun game that I knew that a lot of adults played, and some of my friends started playing it and got roped into it. And that's how I started playing poker. And yeah, early on, I was very, very clueless for a long time, where I didn't know if 2 pair beat 3 of a kind for years, I'm sure, playing poker, because I only played a few times a year. But yeah, that was my origin story.
How far you've come. Where did you grow up?
So I was born and raised in Boston, and then my family I moved with my family to Seoul, South Korea, when I was in 3rd grade. And yeah, so that's really where I started playing poker. Actually, my first time playing organized poker was in a casino, was in Seoul, because the legal gambling age in Korea is 19 years old. So I got to get a 2-year head start on my American counterparts. And the way it happened was actually pretty funny. I was beating up on some of my friends in some of these home games and actually doing okay.
How'd you get better? I remember how'd you get better, considering it took you 2 years to figure out that 3?
I didn't get better, but everyone was just really we were all just really bad and clueless. No one was trying to get better. We just wanted to play poker and gamble and have the experience of playing poker. One of the cool things that Korea has are these facilities called board game cafes, and it's essentially a huge basement where they just have every board game imaginable, and then a whole bunch of poker tables, essentially, where you can sit down with your friends and play whatever board game you want. You just rent them and you pay time. You can play poker as well. And so we were playing a lot of poker in these board game cafes. And yeah, so one day I, won $40 or $50, and I was bragging to my dad about it, and he was like, "Oh, you think you're good? Let's go to an actual casino and sit down and
wow.
you take a shot." So
first intro to your dad facilitated it. This is
my mom was horrified. She was like, what is happening? What is happening in my family that my husband is taking my son to the casino for the first time.
Let me put this into context for the listener, because I've got inside information here, considering you're one of my best friends on the planet. What was your dad's reaction when you told him you were going to be a professional poker player?
Oh, he just laughed. they both my parents laughed. They're like, what are you talking about? At the time I was a couple of years out of college, was working in consulting, was just, a lowly analyst, and I was playing a lot of poker on the side. At this point, I was trying very hard to get better, and was, making a decent amount, enough money to feel like I could actually make the jump to playing poker professionally. And it was just completely out of left field for my parents, completely unheard of. They thought it was a joke the first time I brought it up.
Needless to say, they probably weren't happy. They were not thrilled with that decision.
Yeah, they were not. They were not. They were not encouraging right at the start.
Yeah.
It took a couple, and I knew that that's how it was going to be. Like when I brought it up to them, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a process, like getting them on board. And I expected the reaction that they had was exactly what I expected.
Yeah. And so anyway, I just want to add in some context here to the fact that your dad is taking you to your first casino adventure, when they definitely were not on board when you went pro, but here they are. This is the gateway. They only have themselves to blame.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just a product of my circumstance. I had no say in the matter.
We took you to school for 20 years straight, and like one time I took you to the casino, and this is the thing that you do. I can't believe it.
Yeah. And I'll never forget that first session, man. I sat down. It was a 1-2 game. I sat down with $100, which I'm sure was like 80% of my net worth at the time. I remember, I'll never forget the hand where I got stacked. I had Jack 7 offsuit. I flopped a Jack, which was like middle pair by the time we got to the river, and the guy jammed the river, and I just decided to call, and he showed top pair. I can still remember actually like what the guy was wearing. That hand was just like, it's just seared into my memory. And I think that's really like, that hand was like the big turning point for me in poker, and like wanting to get better and being like, oh shoot, there's like guys that are like way better than me at this. And I think that was like my general approach to just like a lot of things in life was like, if I got smacked the first time I played, my initial gut reaction is like, okay, like let's try one more time. Let's run it back. And like, let's see what I can do.
Why do you think that is?
Get better. I mean, I guess it's just natural competitiveness that's just, just part of my personality. I think I was just, like I said, I was like that with board games early on. I remember playing, Monopoly with my parents, as a little kid, and they'd tell me it's bedtime, and I'd say like, oh, hold on, don't touch the board. Like, we got to finish this game like tomorrow, and like don't mess anything up because I'm winning. Like, let's let's make sure we finish this out, and I get the dub. So yeah, I think that was just like, that's still like, I think part of my nature, where regardless of what I mean, we played like ping pong together, or just completely random activities. And like, if I'm getting destroyed, I think that the first thing that I want to do is run it back and see, how I'm getting destroyed, what it is I can do to get a little bit better, and maybe actually start winning at whatever activity it is we're competing at.
Yeah, I can attest to that. In our wolf retreats, a lot of times after everybody gets done playing at the casino and is winding down, we tend to play board games. And John, once he learns a new board game that is interesting to him, there's no letting go. He would just play all night long and completely not play poker the next day to play this board game, and get better at it. That's just, once he finds something like he can sink his teeth into, he gets like very, very obsessive. And this is actually a pretty good trait for becoming a very strong poker player over time. That ability to sit with your losses, to sit with the strategy, and asking yourself, like, just forensically, what went wrong here? Like, what could I have done better? What are these guys doing differently? Where can I find more information? Where can I upgrade the way that I think about this game? I think that is such an innate edge to folks who are born with that attribute that I just can't, I can't overstate it. So you play poker the one time with your dad at the casino.
He wasn't even playing. He was just railing, right? And then I got stacked, and I get up, and he laughs, and he's like, "Haha, like, not so hot, are you?" Like that. Yeah, he was just like, he thought you were like hot shit, and like, guess what? We're leaving the casino 15 minutes after we walked in. Like, how good can you actually be? And like that, I'm sure like all of that just fed into like, all right, man, I'm gonna start watching some videos on YouTube, and I'm gonna learn this. I'm gonna learn this game.
He inadvertently was pressing all the right buttons. Like, he was, or maybe it was advertently. I don't know if that's a word, but it should be. Maybe he was purposefully pushing all the right buttons. I don't know. Like, but as your coach and somebody that's coached you for a long time, I know that like to get Jon to care, to get Jon to try harder, those are the buttons that you push.
Yeah.
Haha, you suck. Haha.
Embarrass me. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's embarrass him. He's gonna fight harder. Like whenever somebody pushes him, he's gonna get up off the ground and try to push back even harder.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely me.
So what happened after that? After you resolved to get better at poker, how old were you? I'm guessing you said like 19 was the minimum.
I was 19.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. So that was like, I guess like right at the end of high school, or maybe like right before I went off to college. Then I went to college and
where'd you
took a
go to
little break.
college?
Portland, Oregon. Went to a small liberal arts school called Reed College in Portland. So I was in the Pacific Northwest. And took a little break from poker, honestly. Like I didn't really think about it very much. I was just, doing the normal college experience and honestly playing more obsessed with basketball at the time than I was with poker. Um, and then I kind of hit my own, the way people hit like got caught up in the poker boom and the moneymaker effect. I started watching Poker After Dark and High Stakes Poker on YouTube. And I guess they started just releasing the episode for free. And I remember watching Tom Dwan for the first time and being like, holy shit, this guy I want to be like this guy. And I got really, really into it. I was just watching it, watching High Stakes Poker and Poker After Dark all day long. I started learning about what the difference between like a sit and go and a cash game was, because they had both of those formats. At this time, I was still very, very green to poker. And then I found these card rooms that were all over Portland. They weren't casinos because all they did was spread tournaments. They didn't take a rake. They paid like a $10 entry fee basically, and you could play as many tournaments as you want for $10. They also had these like faux cash games that they called shootouts, which were basically like timed cash games that I don't know. All of this was just to kind of get through all the loopholes for being able to run a poker room in Portland. And once I found these card rooms, I mean, everything else in my life just disappeared. Like, yeah, I was still playing basketball and going to class, but my priority was playing poker. I would play, until 2-3 in the morning and then wake up to go to class. And all I would be thinking about was playing poker. And yeah, that's really when I started getting into it, was kind of like my junior and senior year of college.
So you were a few years in to school, junior, senior, playing pretty much all poker. You graduate, you do have a degree, and you actually had, a job where you had to dress up. Tell me about dressing up, going to your job, and utilizing that degree.
So, I had a bunch of interviews lined up. So I moved down to San Francisco Bay Area right after college. Had a bunch of interviews lined up in the summer and was just kind of optimistic that I would land one of them. So I made the move even before I had an offer, and I was crashing on my friend's house, who lived down in Mountain View at the time. And I still had the poker bug. So the first thing I did when I woke up at like 7 a.m, the first day I was there, was just look up to see if there are any card rooms or casinos nearby. And lo and behold, Bay 101 and Matrix Casino, which I know you're very familiar with,
Yep.
were right basically down the highway from my friend's house. And so the first day I was there, I went to Bay 101 at like 8 or 9 in the morning just to see what was up. And I was like, holy cow, they have like 3-2, 3-5, like 2-5 games running at like 8 in the morning on a weekday in the summer or something like that. And yeah, I landed one of the offers, or landed one of the interviews. But even as I was interviewing, even as I was, ostensibly trying to get a normal job, all I was doing was thinking about and playing poker in my free time. And so, yeah, there was a period of time where, kind of before I started working, where I was just like, man, do I even want to start this job? Or like, could I just do this poker thing like all day long and just, have it be my main source of income.
What year was this?
2014.
Okay. So our paths could have crossed at the Matrix back in
Really?
2014. I think so. Yeah, I think that was about the time. 2013, 2014 was my Matrix time.
Okay. Yeah, I was playing way smaller stakes than you were. I know about the 1025 game at Matrix, and I was,
like
I wasn't playing
days
that game even by the time I left the Bay Area for LA. So, yeah. And so I worked this, suit and tie job, worked in a cubicle for a couple of years, and then it was,
How was it?
you know, it was it was fine. I mean, I wasn't I wasn't I wasn't as passionate about it as I was about poker, and I think that's what I started realizing was that, I started having days where like I would get off of work at, 6 or 7 o'clock, then I would just take the Caltrain down to San Jose and play poker until like 4 in the morning, and then like take the first Caltrain back up to work, go home, shower, and then show up to work off of like basically no sleep. And I guess I was like young enough at the time where I could do that a couple times a week, and it wouldn't be like debilitating. I'm sure I wasn't doing a great job at work when if I'm showing up with no sleep, but again, like I was so obsessed with poker at the time that that was just clearly the priority for me. And then again, like I said, once I started kind of making enough money at at those 2, 3, 5 games, at those maybe like playing 5, 10 a couple times a week, that's when I just decided to kind of quit my job and take poker as seriously as I could. And
Tell me how that happened. What led up to it? Just a slow burn, one day.
No, I went on a massive. I did what everyone recommends you not to do. I went on a massive heater and decided to quit after the massive heater. I won like 40 or 50K in 2 months, and I was just like, well, this is way more than what I'm making at my job as an entry level analyst. And if I'm making more and I'm happier and this is all I'm thinking about all day long, then I would just want to take a shot at doing this. And yeah, lived in San Francisco for a couple more months before moving down to San Jose for about a year and a half, just so I could be closer to the casinos and not have to commute. I literally lived walking distance from Matrix and Bay 101 for like a year and a half, and just, knew all the managers, knew all the dealers. I was playing like 10, 12 hours, like 5, 6 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah,
Grinder.
Yeah, you know what I'm like. Like, again, like you said, when I get my teeth into, sunk into something, it just becomes like completely an obsession for me. And so yeah, I did that for about a year and a half, then realized that I wanted to play, take a shot at like some of the bigger games, around the country. So I moved down to LA, and really just tried to focus on playing 510 at the, just around LA at the time. And that was kind of for me, it felt like a big jump because I was playing mostly 2-5 or 2-3-5, which is the game in the Bay Area. And then, yeah, just try to move up stakes, try to move to a bigger city.
What year did you move to LA?
Right before COVID. So I'm guessing it was 2018.
And then
I remember playing my first like LAPC series, or grinding my first cash games at like the LAPC series, and it going really, really well. And then COVID hit, because LAPC is like right in January, March, and then everything just shut down, January, February, and then everything shut down in March. And yeah.
What'd you do?
Short-lived.
When live poker went down?
I was, again, I think I was very optimistic. I was like, this will blow over. COVID will blow over a couple of weeks, and everything will be back open. Everything will be back to normal. Like, the doctors and whatever will figure this out, and whatever. It's like, there have been other things like that before, right? Like SARS or Ebola and stuff. And it was like, yeah, it was kind of scary for a little while, but they all got resolved really, really quickly. Nothing ever shut down long term. So I thought that was what was likely going to happen. And so I thought I was just like, okay, I'm just going to take a vacation, right? I'm going to take like a however long vacation I get to take, and I'll come back when the games are back. And then I think kind of by the summertime, it became apparently obvious that, hey, this is a little bit different from the other pandemics, and this might last a long time, and I'm going to need to find a new way to make money. And that's when I made the decision to kind of tackle online poker. I think it was something that was really scary to me at the time. I was kind of averse to playing online. It's just had the perception that it was really, really tough. Made the commitment to, getting a coach, and that's sort of how I found you.
So before we get into that, I want to ask you, because it seems like early on you hadn't like embraced progression in education, but I have to imagine, you moved to LA, COVID happens after LAPC, you wait a few months, and then you look for a coach. Looking for a coach, right? Had you been studying as, before you were ready to move to online poker? Like, had you been learning and trying to progress and get better over time? And if so, like, what did that look like during your obsessive years playing live poker?
Yeah. I definitely was trying really, really hard. I was trying really hard, but mostly on my own. One of the things that I used to do was, like, back in the live at the bike days when that was kind of like the premier poker stream. That was like one of the things that I did religiously, where like the Friday game where like, Garrett and Andy and like, Dan, Zach, some of the guys that I thought were like really, really good at poker were playing regularly. I would wake up on like Saturday and like watch the full stream. And that's like the first thing that I would do, like every Saturday morning, would just be like, watch these guys, take notes, and like think about like, man, I wouldn't have done that. Like, why, how did they find this? Why'd they find this line or take this action? I did other things. Like I was, part of like the Upswing Poker Lab, and I watched Run. I was a, Run It Once member and watching lots of Run It Once videos. Yeah, so it was mostly just through like online training sites, watching live streams, and trying to do stuff by myself, which it felt like really doable for live poker, because live poker just felt soft enough where I was like, yeah, I can do this by myself. I don't need to pay someone to teach me how to do any of this. Looking back at it now, I really wish I had. I think it would have expedited a lot of things, and I was still making very, very big mistakes all over the place. And I think if I for example, hired you earlier on as a coach, a lot of those things would have gotten resolved very, very quickly. But again, live cash just so soft, especially in LA, that when you're making a lot of money, it's hard to tell me that like, I need to try harder or something like that.
Yeah, so it's hard to say like, hey, you're doing well, but you could do 50% better,
Right.
like, and what is 50% better worth, right? Like hourly wise, with the number of hours that you're playing. It's really interesting. The folks that generally seek out coaching are the ones that are kind of like, in a ditch and having an existential crisis. Very rarely does somebody seek out poker coaching who's actually doing quite well, and feeling pretty confident about their game and how much money they're making and that sort of thing, which in my opinion, I think it should be like the exact opposite. The person who's making a lot of money, who's obsessed and doing whatever it takes to get better at poker, they're going to actually benefit significantly more from coaching than the player who's in the ditch. Because generally, the player that's in the ditch has some like fundamental issues that they could probably resolve on their own if they really, really decided to put forth the energy and effort on the right things.
Yeah, I think there was part of me deep down that knew that I was mainly winning because the games were so soft, and there's just enough people just punting at live poker, and punting enough that's like the main reason I was winning. And I think there's like, I'm sure there's like a little bit of insecurity there that made me really scared of playing online, where I thought that, everyone would be much better. There'd be way fewer people just punting it off all the time. And I think I think deep down I knew that was the case, that like, hey, like most of my win rate is coming from recreational players, people who are not trying even as close to as hard as I am to win. And they're just, making really, really, really big mistakes, bigger mistakes than I was making. And that's how I was really generating my win rate. It wasn't because I was some super crusher that, knew all the secrets, knew all the tricks, knew how to, had fundamentally sound, technical poker skills. And it was really just capitalizing on everyone else playing really poorly. And honestly, that's still what a lot of live poker is, I think.
Sure. And online poker too, I think to a degree, to a lesser extent. Mm-hmm. So catching back up, COVID happens, live poker's paused. You decide to play online poker because you realize, oh yeah, this COVID thing is probably not going away tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So probably need to make some money. I know that you sought out a coach. What was the process of that? And then how did you, end up finding me?
So I actually just cold DM'd a whole bunch of people on Twitter. Like I was on poker Twitter at the time, not just like mostly just lurking and like reading everyone's posts. And I just cold DM'd a whole bunch of people and was just like, hey man, like I'm looking to learn how to play online cash, preferably 6-max, preferably an American coach, so that, we're in a reasonable time zone. So, we can, it's a little bit easier to work with each other. I don't really know why that mattered so much to me, but it was something that I remember mentioning in my post. I don't know why it mattered so much to me, but anyways, so I cold DM a whole bunch of people, and KL Cleaton, who runs like Range Trainer Pro, or is like the creative Range Trainer Pro, at least that's what I know him as these days. He like snap DMs me back and he's like, yo, Brad Wilson, he's the guy for you. Like reach out to him like ASAP. And I was like, all right, like I've never heard of this guy. So I Google you. I think one of the things that gave me a lot of confidence in reaching out to you and hiring you was that I saw that you'd been like a Run It Once coach a long time ago, right? And you were making videos for Run It Once, and like I had a lot of respect for all the coaches on Run It Once. Had obviously a lot of respect for Phil Galfond, and just thought like, okay, like if they thought that Brad was good enough to be a coach for them, if they thought that Brad was good enough to make videos, training content for them, then he's probably certainly good enough for me. And I reached out to you. We set up our first few coaching sessions, and I think I'm sure you remember this too, but like the beginning, just it couldn't have gone any better for you. Honestly, I think you ran so hot as in terms of getting credit as a good coach. Because yeah, I guess I'll just tell the story where I made a couple big folds in a play and explain that I made for Brad and or made for you, and you're like, yeah, I would never fold those hands, right? And then I look back because I was playing on Ignition Bovada at the time, and I saw the hands that I got bluffed by, and I was like, holy shit, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. I should listen to him.
It wasn't even that like I'm not gonna fold. I would never fold these hands. It was, they could just have like 6-7 off here. Like you just can't fold. And like they ended up having like 6-5 off or something. Like it was like they had a hand that was like very close to what I arbitrarily said. And yeah, both bluff catching situations were like really good. You would have won both hands. So yeah, and yeah, they obviously the flop was like jack deuce and the like 6-7 off one, and they could have had a jack, right? Like that's a hand that like they can have trips. They can also have a bunch of other random things too, but yeah, I did run good in their exact holdings, and yeah, the rest was kind of history. And I won't forget, your DM on Twitter. You were very respectful. I think I specifically remember how respectful you were, and had no idea that would change over time and how terrible you would be eventually. But during that time, you were very respectful, and you asked me what stake, what stake should I play, and I asked you what your bankroll was and what stakes you were playing live, and I said, oh, you should probably be playing 200 no limit, which you did not like that idea. You were not,
like 200. Open. Yeah, I think this is like that's a great story to like show just how scared and like intimidated of online poker I was at the time. Where I was just like, dude, I was thinking like 50 NL, like 200. That's like 1-2. Like that's like a couple stakes below what I play live. Like, aren't those guys just gonna like eat me up?
Yeah, you refused.
We settled on 100.
Yeah. Again, respectful John was like, well, how do you feel if, I kind of just start out at 100 and then just kind of like see how it goes. 200, that's a little too much. I was like, all right, whatever, man, whatever is comfortable for you. The good old days. In the archives of my computer, by the way, I still have like our very first coaching session together. Maybe one day we'll do like a retroactive throwback episode of Tactical Tuesday.
Man, please. Yeah, I can't show anybody those folds. I had queens on like jack deuce, and I ended up folding somewhere, like.
Not somewhere. You bet the flop and got raised and folded the flop. Like.
Yeah, let's not show those. Let's not show those hands to anybody ever, please.
Oh man. So, you were intimidated by online poker. You start playing. You start getting coaching. What happened after that?
I mean, same thing that happened, with live poker. I just got completely immersed in playing online. I was helped by COVID. There are no distractions. Couldn't go out for any reason. Couldn't go out to eat. Couldn't meet friends. Couldn't meet family. And so all I did was, be cooped up in my 720 square foot apartment in LA and play online poker all day long. Originally we started out just coaching once a week, every week. And like, it just turned into like, hey, like, can I just send you a hand history? Can we hop on Zoom real quick and just like talk about this? I know we don't have a coaching session, but I just want to like get a couple things, like get your opinion on a couple things. And then, I think like we just ended up talking all the time. I think you gave me like probably like 10x more coaching than I was paying for just on a regular basis. Like, yeah, I was paying for four coaching sessions, 4 1-hour coaching sessions every month, but I was getting something like 40 hours of coaching every month, or 40 hours of like Zoom time with you every month. And that just really, really catapulted my trajectory through the stakes. And like, I don't even remember how long I was playing 100 NL, but I don't think it was longer than a couple weeks. Just very quickly realized that like, okay, yeah, this 100 NL is essentially the same thing as live poker. And yeah, made the transition to like 200 very quickly, and then kind of played 200 for a little bit, for I would say like a couple months. And during that time, I was going through a lot of your courses, right? You released Preflop Bootcamp at the time. I remember taking that. You did the Elites program. I did that twice, and really started ramping up my volume at 200 NL at the time, and that kind of gave me a ton of confidence that I could take some of this role and shot take like 500 NL and higher stakes. And so yeah, we started coaching in I think it was like early August of like 2019, and I was kind of playing 200 NL through the end of the year, and then December was when I started shot taking 1K NL, 510, 6 max, and yeah, just again, just smooth
It's
sailing.
2020.
Like,
I think it was 2020, not 2019.
no. Oh, was it 2020? Okay, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
COVID, CPG launched in like fall of 2019, and COVID happened almost directly after. So I was gonna say like that means there are like 5-year coaching anniversaries coming up soon, which is like actually mind-boggling. It's 4 years, which is still feels like yesterday that all of this happened.
At the time, I remember telling you, hey, like I need to take one coaching session off because I'm going up to the Bay Area with my girlfriend at the time, and she's gonna grab some of her furniture and stuff and move in with me during COVID. And you were like,
nervous.
whoa.
It was the first time that you were like cohabitating.
You were like, yo, have you ever moved in with someone before? And I was like, no, man, this is my first time. Like, and now we're married. We have I have a daughter with her, and we're just like, honestly, it's been a crazy whirlwind since we met.
Yeah, it's I guess when you put it that way, it 4 years makes a lot of sense. You got married, you have a kid. It's now been almost maybe a couple of years since your wedding, which is very crazy. Got to meet your parents there at your wedding, and that was really nice, and your family and friends, and yeah. So it's been quite the journey, and you went from playing 100 no limit when we started in August. Talk about your progression through the stakes. At what point were you playing 510 online, and how did that go?
So I progressed kind of normally through 100, 200, then decided to start shot taking 500 at December. So I guess 4 months after we started coaching. And I remember like 500 NL just being really, really hard. And there were some other members in the Chasing Poker Greatness community in the Slack at the time that I really respected. Some guys who were playing like 2K NL on Ignition Bovada, and they were telling me like, yeah, like 510 is like that's really where it starts getting hard, because you're just going to run into like reg fish ratios that are much higher than what they usually are at like 200 NL and 100 NL. There's a lot of people who are feeding their families like playing 500 NL online, and now you're competing against them. You're competing against guys that are people that are trying as hard as I am to win now. And yeah, so I remember kind of struggling at my first 500 NL shot take, and like bringing hands and saying like, I'm going to drop down to 200 NL again. Like I just I don't think I'm good enough for this yet. And then I remember one night I was playing 500 and I was like, fuck, this is just hard, right? And so I don't know what got into me, but I opened up a table of 1K and I was like, let's just see what's going on at like 1K. Is it like, or is everyone just like, is it like this at 1K too, where everyone's just like 3-betting the shit out of me pre-flop, and there's like cold 4-bets everywhere, and like I'm this is just feels much more competitive than 200 now. My first 1K table that I opened was 30 big blind fish playing heads up, and I was like, whoa, how is this even allowed? I've been dying to find a table like this at 500 NL, and I haven't been able to find one. So I sat with them and just started doing okay versus them at obviously I was doing okay versus them through 230 big blind fish. And that just kind of gave me like the confidence, like, I'll put up another table and just like see what's up. And it's like, oh, well, there's like another fish here too. It's like, okay, there's one fish. Like, I think I can generate like some win rate at these tables. So my 500 NL like shot take stint really only lasted like, I don't know, a week or something like that, because I just kind of stumbled into playing 1K like this. And, I'm sure I was helped out a lot by just running really, really hot early on. I remember like, the last 3 weeks of December, I won like 17K or something like that playing 1K at the time. And that was just, obviously you can't do that if you're not running really, really well. And so, yeah, I got kind of lucky my first few sessions or first few weeks of playing 1K and L. And that just, again, that just really like catapulted me into being confident enough to play all the time.
Yeah. Snowballed into January, which was a pretty good month.
Yeah. January, immediately following my month of taking a shot at 1K. I think I won almost 50K playing 1K. And I remember like I don't think I was like deliberately hiding it from you, but like I knew like I was onto like a pretty big month, like as the month was going on. And I remember telling you at the end of the month, you're like, so how'd your month go? And I was like, yeah, I won like 48K. And you didn't believe me. You were like, no way, right? And I was like, no, like let me show you. Like here's the graph. And like I think like when I saw your reaction at the end of the month, that was like when I was like, oh shit, like this is like a pretty big deal. If like Brad didn't even believe me like when I first brought it up to him. And yeah,
I remember trying to advise you. This is not normal. This is not a normal month at 1K no limit, winning 48K. Pretty sure you were convinced it was sustainable forever.
I was like, oh man, I'm just gonna make 600K a year now. Is this just like what? This is just the baseline for me? Clearly not. I don't think I've won 50K playing 1K online in a month ever since then. So yeah, it's like had the hottest stretch of my 1K career right at the beginning. But it's really helpful to have that right at the beginning, right? Like that gives me confidence, and it gives me again the bankroll to like continue playing 1K now, to like withstand some downswings or some break even stretches, and at least again like know that I can beat these stakes if I if I just keep playing. And I think it's sort of related to like guys who have like a really big tournament score right at the beginning of their career, right? Like even if they're not good enough to like play tournaments regularly or play tournaments with stakes regularly, like that money, that liquidity plus the confidence can really just like carry you to the point until you are ready to play those stakes, until you
Absolutely.
are like good enough to play those stakes. And I think that's really is just the cash game equivalent of what happened to me in my first time playing 1K now.
It was great timing. Everything worked out perfectly. Your rise up through online poker was pretty insane. Just starting at 100 and L in August, having a 50K month by January. That's like 6 months later. Pretty much unheard of. And, we coach a lot of people and we guide a lot of people up through the stakes. So I think
I'm paying you like $150 for a coaching session.
Yeah.
While I'm getting like, I don't know how much value.
right. $150 for a coaching session, and really like 10x more than the actual session. To be fair, you were always pretty fair as it related to like if we did a session that lasted a couple hours, you would pay for 2. You were quite respectful of my time and my energy, and that always, from my side made me want to work harder for you, right? Made me want to do whatever I could to help you in your journey to be successful. And I think it also goes to show like I was a pretty shit businessman back then. Pretty bad at business, but passion and love for coaching and facilitating growth, and helping people chase poker greatness, I think is something that is pretty innate in me. It's what these days I kind of spend most of my time doing, which is the way that I like it with the CPG Wolves. So that catches us up pretty much to the present. And then you grinded cash games for a few years. I started the Wolves. Tell me about you coming along as the secondary coach. I don't know, how do we frame this? Not
assistant coach?
Assistant coach, I guess, for the Wolves, a partner in the Coaching for Profit.
I think it took a little bit of convincing early on, if I remember correctly. I wasn't that excited about doing coaching. Never really.
Oh, you hated coaching?
Yeah, it was hard to. I had one bad experience because you pawned off one of your students to me early on, and I was just like,
and not pawned off. Oh, come on, let's set the record straight. There's no pawning off. I had a student that spoke primarily Korean. Jon is Korean and speaks Korean. So he, I asked Jon if, hey man, you want to coach this guy because we're having a communication problem. And Jon remembers it as me pawning off a problematic student, but that's not how it went.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by, the student's work ethic. And so I thought, maybe I was a little, again, I was.
God, I hope he doesn't listen to the podcast.
Green to coaching at the time. I don't think he's, I don't know, given the, I guess I won't say anything else. And so I was a little, I think, jaded by my first experience coaching. I was just like, I don't know if I want to do that again, or I don't know if I want to do that stuff again. Like, yeah, if everybody works super hard and is dying to get better at poker and is just putting in tons of volume and tons of effort all the time, then yeah, I would like to work with those guys. But it just doesn't seem like most of the people who look for poker coaching for the most part, or any kind of coaching at all, are that type of person. And so it takes some convincing. I think where I really turned around was when I saw the power of a data-driven approach to poker. And it's something that you were working on for a couple months before I joined the team on Wolves, or before I really even started helping out with like the data-driven strategies. But I think one thing that did was that it gave me a lot of confidence that I could actually teach this to somebody else. And one of the things that I felt with my first experience coaching was like, man, I don't know like how I can convey my thought process in a replicable manner to somebody else, right? It just seems like I'm picking up on things that maybe that I'm having trouble like teaching other people how to pick up on those things, or I'm like realizing data points that I'm not even able to like articulate fully. And I think that was mostly like my shortcomings as a coach. It wasn't my students like failure to understand anything. And then I saw this data-driven approach to poker, and I was like, wow, this is like, I could teach this to somebody else. Like I could show people like, hey, this, these spots are hot spots. These spots are over bluffed. So you should just, be very non-selective with your bluff catchers and just mostly call with all of your bluff catchers. Or, hey, these spots are under bluff. So like you should just fold most of your bluff catchers in the spot. And like, to me, like that way of thinking about poker seemed much more, I had much more confidence that I would be able to teach someone or help someone get better with that approach to poker.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a thing that takes experience and time, coaching thought process, and it's something that you've recently been a lot more open to, teaching people how to think, outside and inside of the data. And I just think you need reps, you need time. You can't be an amazing coach overnight. It just takes a lot of investment into learning and growth that, get you to that point. And I think like for me, it started with a love of helping people on their journey. That was the main driver in solving that problem. And I think for you, it's pretty similar. Once you realize that you could make an impact and there was a path to it, I think that became your fix, right? That became the thing that you wanted to immerse yourself into. You wanted to coach and help people and plug their leaks and see them get better. At least that's from the outside looking in.
Yeah, no, that I think that's exactly right. Like I guess if I had to phrase it another way, like I just was not confident in my ability to add value to a student. I mean, I had done a very poor job of that with the one student that I had. And then I realized like, man, if I just can't explain like what I'm doing, if I can't help them understand what I'm doing and the way that I'm thinking, then like, how can I like accept money or like payment from these guys if I'm just, very poor at adding value? And then again, like this data-driven approach, I was like, oh, I can do this. This will for sure add value to their game. This will for sure plug leaks. And, there isn't as much nuance, or not to say that there isn't much nuance to our approach to poker, but there isn't as much intangibility or like nuance compared to the thought process driven approach, where it's just like, hey, like, I think that they do this, and so I do that. And try to remember that next time you're playing poker, or try to think that way when you're next time you're playing poker. That's just, I really was doing a poor job of coaching in that style, which is really strange because like, that's how you coached me for the most part, right? And like I loved it, and I just like ate it up, and I was like, man, this is like I totally see what Brad's talking about. Like, I can't wait to like go execute this stuff. So yeah, it's a little strange that like I was, I got like real firsthand exposure to that coaching style working really well, and I just wasn't able to do it myself. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a learning curve, and just being an educator at anything is going to take time. It's going to take reps. It's going to take experience. And maybe just, at that point in where I was in my coaching career, I just didn't have the chops.
And you need the right fit too. I think it takes a student and a coach to really just expedite learning and growth from both sides. You need the right person at the right time that helps you build up the energy to devote to excelling. Because if you don't have great students that aren't progressing, then it feels like you're getting paid for nothing. You're not doing anything. You're not making progress. And I think both you and I know me, I worship the God of progress. Like progress is everything to me. I don't want to do something for a year where there's no progression. Nobody's getting any better. That just feels like a total waste of time and energy. But whenever you reach somebody that, oh, we're making progress and it's tangible, I can see it like week in and week out. I can see the upgrades that they have in their thought process and their thinking, and the way they played a hand a month ago. They'd be ashamed of playing a hand in the same way just like 1 month later. Like that is the thing that like really drives the coach and really drives the student. And so, it's a shared journey. The coach can't do everything. The student is also responsible for doing what it takes to make progress. And when you have students that don't invest the time and energy, it's not very fulfilling. It's not very motivating for the coach. The coach has no reason to get better, right? Because what's the point? They're not learning anyway. I have no incentive to get better. But when it's like, oh, this dude's progressing like at an incredible clip, I got to up my game. Like I need to keep providing value. How do I get better as a coach so that they can learn more on a week in, week out basis? That's when, the system just works and everybody benefits tons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like I said, you were giving me like way, way, way more coaching than I was paying for early on. And I think that's one of the reasons I I think really gravitated towards working with you and kind of learning from you on how to be a coach. Cause I sort of saw, not sort of, I experienced firsthand, like how much you care about your students' success. And like, again, like you said, how much you care about their progression. And I think like that's, at the end of the day, if I'm going to be a coach, like that's the type of coach I want to be. And, I think I was like worried that, I would be viewed as like a, just some sort of like value sucker, blood sucker, where it's just like, hey, yeah, like you pay me. And if you don't get better, then like, whatever, like, you get an hour of coaching a week and like, that's all you get. Yeah, just the coaching experience that I had with you, I think was was kind of like inspirational to me in terms of like, okay, this is like, that's sort of that's the type of person that I want to be. And so I should hang out with you as much as I can.
Well, I appreciate that, John. That means a lot. So we made it up to the present, essentially. Now let's shift gears a little bit, do some, quote unquote lightning round. Now that we've broken down, the story of how you got involved in playing cards. What's the most unexpected thing that's come from your poker journey?
This being a coach, being an educator. I told you that my parents laughed when I told them that I was going to play poker professionally. They laughed even harder when I told them that I was going to teach other people anything. Right? They're like, "What?" My mom is a professor, and she's been a career professor, and so like this is her domain, and she was just like, this is I never saw this happening. My dad, same thing, just like couldn't have ever foreseen me being any kind of educator, I think. And yeah, I think this is by far the most surprising thing that's happened from my poker journey. If I, even when we were coaching early on, I think if you had asked me like, where do you see your life going with poker, I would have been like, I'm just going to try to play the highest stakes I can, just make as much money as possible playing poker. I'm going to play live cash.
I did ask you that. And that's what you said.
Yeah. I was just like, I don't know. I'm just going to be my own person and like, just do my own thing. And yeah, I mean, I think again, like our coaching experience really started changing my perspective on like what I wanted out of life and like what was fulfilling for me. I think you kind of talked about like how fulfilling and satisfying it is to see students that you coach making progress, seeing, a hand that they played completely differently and much better today than they played a few months ago. And I think I'm really, really, really getting that type of fulfillment out of coaching. And coaching the Wolves and being part of the CFP is just like, I didn't know how good that felt to like see the success of others and be kind of instrumental in someone else's success and someone else having like a similar journey to myself. I think that's something that I just like, I didn't care about at all until like a year ago or 2 years ago, where I was just like, yeah, I hear people saying that they're happy for other people's success, but that's just, I don't understand that. And I'm just here to get mine. And now it's been completely flipped. Like I've had so many good experiences, built so many great relationships with the Wolves that it's it's completely taken over like my desire to not to say that I'm not going to, you know, continue trying to play as high stakes and make as much money playing poker as I can, but it's at least gotten even to that, to the point of like, yeah, I want to do this too. I want to, you know, I want to add value to other people's lives and not just my own. And maybe like that's something that, you know, inside bugged me a little bit about just being a professional poker player, was that like, hey, like, you know, well, people say this all the time, like you don't add very much societal value when all you're doing is just, you know, winning money off of people and, you know, not building anything or not, you know, not helping anybody, you know, really along the way. And I think coaching has really filled that kind of filled that gap for me in my life. And yeah, I would say that that's the most unexpected thing that's come from playing cards.
It's great, man. What does your process look like for regularly improving your game these days?
Well, these days, I feel like most of the way that I get better at poker is by thinking of different ways to teach poker to other people, or explain my thought process to other people. One of the things that I'll never forget, I think it was Pads, came on your podcast a long time ago, and he said like, yo, if you want to get better at something, make a course. Try to make a course about it, right? Like if you want to get better at preflop, just make a preflop course. If you want to get better at c betting or facing c bets, make a course about it and just see how much you learn while you're doing it. And like I'm again, like I'm experiencing that firsthand right now. It's just like every single node in the game tree is, you know, is up for debate, is up as, you know, up for questioning in our coaching sessions. And like I have to find like smart, articulate ways to explain a coherent strategy or a coherent thought process for each of that. And a lot of that ends up in me like examining my own strategy and examining like, why do I do something? And then realizing like, wow, like I have like a logical, like there's a logical fallacy in my thought process here. And like, it doesn't make sense that I would do this when, you know, I do something else in this spot with a different hand. And kind of getting called out on that either by my own thought process while I'm, you know, reviewing P&Es or making courses for the Wolves, or whether it's just a Wolf just calling me out and saying like, hey, like that doesn't seem to like make sense strategically, and me just being like, oh shit, you're right, like that just is a mistake that I'm making. I think that's been by far the biggest thing in helping me upgrade my game is trying to teach it to other people every single day.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Learning and like teaching just helps you learn just in a different way that is way stickier, and you just have to go deep because like you just have to. You have no choice, especially if you're teaching a strategy to somebody where all the incentives are aligned and they need to get it. They need to understand it. And sometimes you may even be able to articulate it in the way that you think about it, but then you also have to be able to reframe it in a way that makes sense to them, which makes you think about it a little bit differently. And maybe it becomes a little bit more concrete so that you can replicate it more frequently in game because you came at it from a different angle than you originally had. Just so many benefits in coaching and teaching and building courses and strategies.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say is the most high impact action players can take to improve their game?
Hire a coach.
Yeah.
That's something that it's something that I've resolved to do. It's something that I've made a kind of a big resolution on ever since I started coaching with you, is that anything that I'm going to take seriously in my life for the rest of my life, I'm going to hire a coach. And it doesn't matter what it is. If it's like cooking, I'm going to go to like cooking class or whatever. I'm going to learn from somebody else. I'm not going to try to do it on my own again, because like I just saw like how accelerated the process can be when you hire someone to teach you the ropes and you don't have to stumble through all the mistakes yourself. You know, I think golf is something that's like very, very much on my horizon. I'm certainly going to hire a coach for that. But yeah, I've just made the resolution that like if I'm going to take anything seriously in life going forward, the first thing I'm going to do is seek out a mentor to guide me through the process. And if you're trying to get better at poker, I think that's the first thing that you should do. Is
Absolutely.
That $150 an hour, $200 an hour is as long as you're putting in the effort, is going to pay for itself like 100x easily in poker.
Yeah, and you know, as I alluded to earlier, wasn't the greatest of businessmen. Guess what? You know, I have a business coach. Like we have a business coach that we work with regularly, right? Like
Exactly.
we have I have many different coaches in my life that all help in some arena that is unfamiliar to me. And yeah, I can't overstate the value of just having somebody with experience to guide you and help you avoid the pitfalls that they probably made themselves, right? And that's why coaching generally appeals to people, because they can help people avoid the mistakes that they fell into so that somebody else's journey can go much smoother. And when you think about joy in your career, playing cards, what's the first memory that comes to your mind?
Okay, one of the first memories that comes to mind was I watched, like I said, I watched all the high stakes poker and poker after dark episodes, and for a while I was really, really into playing PLO cash because I watched the PLO poker after dark episode. It had like Brian Hastings, Tom, like a lot of these like just crushers, like young Hastings, Tom Dwan. Yeah, I don't remember exactly who else was in the game actually, but it was just a lot of guys who were really, really good, and they were all playing really, really high level. And I remember watching the thing and the commentator talking about like the naked ace of spades bluff, right, in PLO, and I'm being like, oh, that is a great, like, I never would have thought of that on my own, but that's incredible. Like that's I get that, right? And I remember playing like Six Max Cash online at the time. I was playing on like Carbon Poker, like the merged network. I don't even know if it exists anymore.
Don't think so.
And pulling it off for the first time, right? And just being like, dude, this is amazing. Like I just want to do this all the time. Like I totally like. So I was like obsessed with I was probably overly obsessed with blockers early on because I had that experience and sort of experienced the glee of like pretending to have the nut flush in a spot where they can't have the nut flush, and it's really, really hard to call without the nut flush. Because I could so easily have it because I have 4 cards and it's PLO. And yeah, I would say that's like one of my first early memories of playing poker. And I think that's also why I just loved watching those old shows so much. Was just like I felt like those, like I guess those were like the first forms of coaching for me, was just watching those guys and listening to the commentators talk about playing no limit and PLO.
Yeah, I'm getting a sense of it now. The blocking the nut flush, so bluffing, and then loving Tom Dwan. Also bluffed a lot. I think you gravitated towards the bluffers.
Yeah, for sure. Vanessa Selps, she was like another.
Yeah, it's a sexy
YouTube
part
hero
of
of mine. Yeah.
The opposite. When you think about pain in your poker career, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
Easily that first session in Korea, that hand where I got stacked, and I just realized that like, man, like I'm not even close to who I thought I was like in this game. And there's just people that are like way, way, way more confident. Like I remember turning, like this is like how the hand happened. He jammed the river and I called, and he turned over his hand, and then I turned over mine. Right. Like a fish. And everyone just like laughed at me. Like I saw like the reaction of like everyone like, okay, like this guy clearly sucks. And like that was like the real impetus for like, okay, man, I just want to get better. And like I want to experience that as infrequently as possible next time I play poker, and hopefully never again.
The best $100 that you ever spent.
Oh, actually. easily.
Imagine there's a carbon copy of yourself who's just getting into the game. If you could sit that kid down, give him some advice, what would it be?
Learn pre-flop. That would be the first thing. I think that's generally the advice that I give, most all the wolves. It's not like I have to tell them about learning pre-flop, but like a lot of the people that kind of are new to the Slack community or early on in like PPHs, when I used to come to Poker Power Hour and just talk hands with people, like one of the things that I noticed was that like, hey, like there's just a lot of pre-flop mistakes going on in people that like don't just sit down and learn how to play pre-flop. And I'm talking about like 100 big blind, 6 max cash specifically. And it's just like, it's a street that you play every single hand. And so it's really, really important to know what you're doing, since you're going to have to make a decision every single hand that you play in that street. And it's very, very doable to like learn the ranges and memorize them. And it might seem a little bit daunting at the beginning, but like it's nothing compared to, memorizing aggregated report outputs from solvers, or like memorizing like why certain hands fall into certain c-bet sizes, or what your bluff check raises should be on the river, like a 4-bet pot. Like this pre-flop is just like very, very doable. It's very black and white, and I think like it just sets the foundation for being a good poker player. It solves a lot of post-flop issues as well, where like if you have a solid pre-flop strategy, you're not going to run into these uncomfortable situations post-flop as often. And on top of that, you're going to be able to range your opponents much more accurately than you would if you don't even know what range you're playing pre-flop. So yeah, first thing I would say is just like, hey man, like whether it's pre-flop boot camp or some other course that helps you sit down and just memorize the first street of poker, like that's where you should start, and then get a coach.
Yeah, it's hard to range people if you don't know what range of hand they're starting with. Makes it quite difficult. What's some common poker advice you hear that you completely disagree with?
Okay, so the answer that I wanted to give was actually the answer that you gave in your interview, which is like online poker is dead or poker is dying. I think like I just could not disagree with that more. Like I said, I came into online poker being very, very, very intimidated and thinking that it was just like, all crushers and there's no win rate to be had. But like, let me tell you, there's money to be made and like lots of money to be played online. Obviously, if you play live, it's you're probably very aware that there's lots of money to be made playing live poker as well. I think another thing that I hear really, really regularly is like fish don't bluff, right? And we have given our data-driven approach to poker, we can very easily quantify just how frequently fish bluff, or how frequently even like regs bluff, right? And I think that's just one of the most common misconceptions that I hear all the time. Is just like, hey, like this guy's a fish, so he's not bluffing. And yeah, I guess I'll give away a free piece of strategy here. Is just that fish do a lot of bluffing, and they're actually do more bluffing than regs. And you should, if you're not bluff catching a lot versus fish, you are certainly leaving money on the table.
Yeah, it's something that Nick says on Twitter all the time, and just like almost nobody believes him. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
The pot odds model is a real thing, and when you're getting 4-1 on the river, or 5-1 on the river, or whatever it is, you don't need to win more than 50% of the time. You need to win generally more than 25% of the time, more than 30% of the time, more than 33% of the time. So you lose very often. But just because you lose very often doesn't mean that you're not making a plus EV play. And the goal of poker is to not win the most pots. The goal of poker is to win money, period.
Yeah.
All right, so we're about to wrap up. If you could wave a magic wand, change one thing about poker, what would it be?
I'd really like to change kind of the stigma, might be too strong a word, but I'd really like to change kind of the stigma or the perception, the public perception around poker, that it's essentially a casino game, right? And the problem is that it's played in casinos with all these like negative EV games like blackjack and baccarat and roulette and slots and stuff like that. And because of that, I don't think that poker gets the respect that it deserves, right? It doesn't get the respect that like games like chess or Go or even video games that are highly, highly competitive, right? Like, I don't think it gets the respect that it deserves in that sense, and that it's not treated the same way the other like mind sports or esports are treated. And if I could change like one thing, I think it would be like, hey, like maybe we can, maybe this is like maybe there's like a role for me somewhere down the road for this later in my career that I can't imagine right now. But if I could just change the perception that like the general public has about poker, like the reaction that my parents had when I told them, like, hey, like I'm gonna do this for a living, and they're just like, what, you're gonna gamble? Like that's like, can you even make money doing that? Like, if I could change that, I think that'd be the one thing that I'd really like to change. And I think that would, really help the game just grow a lot as a as a whole, is if sort of that gambling casino stigma wasn't attached to it as much as it is.
Yeah, that's really great answer. One that I don't know has been said before on the show. So well done, John. We got just a couple more. If you could put up a billboard, every poker player's got to drive past on their way to the casino or the card room, what would it say?
I'm trying to be like encouraging. Like I'm trying to like.
You can be however you want to be. I know your favorite one was, Brian Rast's answer.
Yeah.
That, your mother doesn't love you.
Yeah.
So you can go in whichever direction that you so choose to go.
Okay. Maliciously, I would say fold more.
Yeah.
Fold more. They're not bluffing.
Hmm.
And I don't know if I wanted to help people out.
Call more. They're bluffing.
Yeah, yeah. You should probably call more and value bet a little bit thinner than you think you should value bet.
Nice. So what's a project you're working on that's near and dear to your heart?
Easy. I mean, the only thing I'm working on these days is Wolves. Let's just be okay. I had a daughter 10 weeks ago, so that is a lifelong project that I'll be working on. But other than family, yeah, it's just Wolves, man. I just, I'm 100% invested in this in the CFP, and the success of our students. And I think the thing that's like really making me bear down even more is that like we're starting to really gain some traction, I think, in these last couple months or like the last year or so. And we're really seeing these results just like come up. We're seeing guys kind of get deeper into their contracts. And we have guys who are playing 2K and L, 1K and L. We have, you know, players out there playing live poker as big as like 25, 50, 100, right? And like I think those are like stakes, and these are things that were like hard to imagine, you know, 8 months ago or a year ago. And now it's just like all happening. And now that we're here, it's just, I just want to get as many people to those stakes as possible, many of our players to those stakes as possible. And I think we have a pretty good formula for doing it. And yeah, we just can't wait to see like where this project goes. I think no limit cash is really just the beginning for us. I don't see like any reason why we wouldn't be able to replicate this for PLO cash, live cash, MTTs. So yeah, just excited to be on this working on this project and be on this journey with you.
Thanks, man. I'm pumped too. And very similar for me, just coaching the Wolves. That's where pretty much all my energy goes to these days. So final one, where can the Chasing Poker Greatness listener find you on the World Wide Web?
cpgwolves.com. Drop an application if you're interested. I don't have any personal website or anything like that. So if you want to, you know, talk more or are interested in coaching or just, you know, I don't know, want poker advice, then yeah, Chasing Poker Greatness or the Wolves, join the Slack community, you know, drop an application in the cpgwolves.com website, and yeah, we can meet there.
Perfect, man. It's been a pleasure having you on, and I'll see you in a few minutes when we do more coaching with the Wolves.
See you next week. Oh wait, wrong podcast.
Yeah, wrong day. See you, man.
See ya.
Your feedback drives our content, so drop a comment down below and let us know what you'd like to see next.
This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson. Coach Brad approved. Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.